In my hand right now is a fistful of ground-up volcano. Black, light, gritty, like coarse pepper. On my island, we do not buy this. We sweep it off the porch. And that one handful does the job of about a dozen things you are paying good money for right now. One aisle at a time. 15 uses. One rock. You walk into the store, and they sell you a different bottle for every little job. One for the garden, one for the sink, one for your shoes, one for the driveway. A whole aisle of single-purpose bottles, each one mostly the same thing wearing a different label and a different price. My people did every one of those jobs for generations with the one material my whole island is made of. No aisle, no dozen bottles, no subscription. One bag of volcanic rock, sold as pumice, as rock dust, as zeolite, all the same volcanic stone, just ground a little differently. That costs a few dollars and lasts you years. Now one honest thing before we start, so that nobody has to write in and correct me. This is volcanic ash, mineral stone, the ground-up rock of a volcano. It is not the wood ash out of your fireplace. Those are two completely different things that people mix up all the time. The wood ash from your stove is a different material with different rules, and it is not what any of this is about. Everything I am about to show you is the volcanic kind, the kind you buy in a bag. I thought, when I was a boy, that ash was garbage. On my island, ash is the reason anything grows at all. Before this is over, I am going to give you 15 real uses, save the best 3 for the very end, and tell you the one thing the store is quietly counting on you never noticing. That most of those bottles you buy are the same rock, sold to you 15 times over. A renter can use half of these today. Let me start with the ground under your feet. Let me tell you where I learned this, so you know it did not come off the back of a bag. I grew up on Fogo, the island whose name means fire, because it is a volcano that still smokes. Everything on that island is black. The sand is black. The stone walls are black. The soil is black, because the soil is the volcano, broken down over a very long time. My grandfather's whole life sat on that black ground, and he wasted none of it. I watched him dust the vines with fine ash. I watched him scrub a burnt pot until it shined with nothing but a handful of grit and a little water. I watched him work a gray volcanic powder into his lime to patch a wall, and that patch outlived him by years. When the floor of the shed took an oil stain from the old motor, he threw a scoop of ash across it, swept it up an hour later, and the stain came away with it. Where you would have seen a mess to get rid of, my grandfather saw the single most useful material on the whole island. Nothing on Fogo that could be swept into a bucket first was ever simply thrown away. A poor island does not have the luxury of a single-use anything. And out of that hard fact comes a kind of genius the rich forget. You learn every last thing one cheap material can do because it is all you have. And here is what I did not understand until I was a grown man standing in an American store. Everything he did with that one black rock, they have turned into 15 separate products in 5 different aisles, each in its own bottle, each with its own price. The garden aisle, the cleaning aisle, the hardware aisle, the foot care aisle, even the aquarium aisle. Before I hand you the 15, one quick word on what to buy, because it is all one stone under 3 names. Ask for volcanic rock dust when you want the fine mineral powder for the garden. Ask for pumice, the light, holy rock, when you want the gritty, scrubbing, draining kind, in coarse or fine. And ask for zeolite when you want the sponge for air kind that drinks up smell and damp. Same volcano, 3 grinds. My grandfather just had the one bucket and knew which end to reach into. Now, let us start where the volcano is most famous, in the garden. And understand why one rock can do so much, because it is not a trick. A volcano does not make one thing. It makes everything at once, and then blows it to powder. What is left is a dust packed with dozens of minerals, iron, calcium, potassium, and a long list of the trace ones that plants and soil quietly need. It is riddled with microscopic holes that hold water and air and smell. And it is hard enough to scrub metal, but soft enough not to gouge it. Cheap where it falls, and more useful than any designed product, precisely because nobody designed it for a single job. Nature already built the multi-tool. The store's whole business is taking it apart and selling you the pieces one at a time. Use one is feeding your soil for years instead of for weeks. Your bagged fertilizer is a sugar rush. The plant drinks it up in a few weeks, the ground goes empty again, and you are back at the store. Volcanic rock dust is the opposite. You scatter a few handfuls over each bed. A couple of pounds for every 100 square feet is a rough guide. Rake it into the top few inches, and then you mostly leave it alone. It releases dozens of slow minerals over years as the roots and the weather grind them out of the stone. This is exactly why my island grows a wine good enough to carry a legal name, in pure ash, with almost no rain. My grandfather never bought a sack of fertilizer in his life. He gave the ground the rock, once, and his tomatoes shamed every neighbor who was still buying bags. You are not feeding this season's plant. You are rebuilding the ground so it feeds itself. One bag, once, against a bag of fertilizer every single spring. Use two is drainage and air, so your soil never sets like concrete. When you mix coarse pumice into a heavy bed or a pot, a few handfuls in a pot, a shovelful worked through a bad bed, it props the whole thing open. Water drains through, air reaches the roots, and the soil never packs down into a brick that sheds water off the top. I remember my mother's pots coming through a hard, dry season green and alive, while the neighbors had turned to cracked gray mud, and the only difference was the grit she had mixed in. That is the exact job the store sells you as bagged perlite or soil conditioner. The same volcanic idea, under a prettier name and a heavier price. Use 3 is the perfect home for seeds and for succulents. Anything that hates wet feet, cactus, succulents, seed-starting trays, wants a light, gritty, fast-draining bed, and that is pumice almost precisely. Mix it about half and half with potting soil for your succulents, or stir a good scoop through a seed tray so the little roots get air instead of drowning. The first time I started seeds in a gritty volcanic mix instead of dense wet soil, twice as many came up, because the seeds could breathe. The store sells that exact blend as cactus and succulent mix in a small bag at a premium. You are making a wheelbarrow of it for pennies. Use 4 is breaking up hard clay and waking a tired lawn, and helping your chickens digest while you are at it. A layer of fine volcanic grit worked into clay opens it up across a season instead of leaving you with a garden of pottery. Rake it thinly into a thin lawn. It lets water and air back down to the roots so the grass thickens. And every poultry keeper knows a bird needs a little coarse grit in its gizzard to grind its food. The very same volcanic grit does that job too, which is why my grandmother's hens were never without a dish of it. The most fertile ground on Earth is volcano leftovers. It is basically free where it falls on my island, and still cheap in a bag where it does not. 4 jobs, and we have not even left the garden. The most fertile ground on Earth, the drainage that saves your pots, the mix your seeds can finally breathe in, and the grit that keeps the hens healthy. All of it out of the same black stuff the tourists stop to photograph and the locals just sweep off the step, and we are only getting started. Now open the cabinet under your kitchen sink, because the next 4 uses all live in there. Use 5 is a heavy-duty hand cleaner that actually cuts grease. This is the gritty soap every mechanic knows. Fine pumice folded into soap, so it scrubs off the ground-in grime and grease that plain soap just slides over. You can buy the bar, or you can stir a spoonful of fine pumice into a little liquid soap and make your own in a jar. It lifts garden dirt, motor oil, and dried paint off your skin where ordinary soap gives up and leaves you scrubbing. My grandfather came in from the fields black to the wrist and came out of the wash basin clean, with nothing but ash and water. That is a special, heavy-duty hand cleaner the store charges a premium for, made from the cheapest rock there is. Use 6 as a scouring powder for everything the sponge surrenders to. A little fine ash or pumice on a damp cloth is a gentle abrasive that takes burnt food off a pot, hard water crust off a faucet, baked grease off a grill grate, and cooked on black off an oven rack. My grandfather cleaned every pot he ever owned exactly this way, and those pots outlasted 3 stoves and both of us using them. Wet the cloth, dip it in the grit, work in a small circle, rinse. It is the same job as the canister of scouring powder in the cleaning aisle, the same abrasive, in fact, for a fraction of the price. Use 7 is polishing and derusting metal, glass, and tools. As a mild rubbing compound, fine pumice buffs away tarnish, light rust, and water stains without gouging the surface. On garden tools, on old cookware, on cloudy glass, on the rust that creeps onto a blade left out in the damp. A pinch on a damp rag, and a little patience brings the shine back. I have watched an old rusty machete come back to a clean gray edge with nothing but ash and elbow grease. That is metal polish and rust remover, 2 more bottles off the shelf, coming out of the same single jar. Use 8, and I am going to be careful here, because I am not a doctor, and this is not medicine, is the pumice stone for rough, calloused feet and hands. It is nothing more than a piece of light, volcanic rock, used dry or damp to gently smooth hard skin, the way people have used it for a very long time. That is the little gray stone they sell you in the foot care aisle in its own package, with its own markup. It is a piece of a volcano. That is all it ever was. 4 bottles now gone from under your sink, and every one of them was this same rock in disguise. That is the pattern, if you are starting to see it. And it only gets worse for the store from here. Now, if you are sitting there thinking this is all fine for people with a garden and a workshop, stay with me. Because the next 4 uses are for the house you are sitting in right now and the driveway just outside it. Use 9 is pulling bad smells straight out of the air. There is a form of this volcanic mineral called zeolite, same volcanic family, that is riddled with microscopic holes, and those holes trap odor. A dish of it in the fridge, a scoop in a pouch tucked into your shoes, a bowl in a musty closet or beside the litter box, and it quietly drinks the smell out of the air. And here is the part the deodorizer companies would rather you never heard. Unlike their little boxes, you set zeolite out in the sun for a few hours and it lets the smell go and is ready to work all over again. It does not run out. My aunt kept the same tray of it in her fish kitchen for years, sunning it on the wall every week. That is a whole run of deodorizer boxes you simply never buy again. Use 10 is pulling the damp out of the air by the very same trick. Those holes that grab odor grab moisture just as well. A tub of zeolite in a damp closet, a gun safe, a basement corner, a boat, or a cupboard pulls the humidity down and keeps the mildew and that musty smell from ever setting in. And again, you dry it in the sun and use it once more, season after season. On an island in the middle of the ocean, everything wants to go damp and mold. A bowl of volcanic mineral in the wardrobe was how my mother kept the clothes dry. That is the little do not eat moisture packet in a size that actually does something and one that never expires. Use 11 is soaking up an oil or a grease spill off a hard floor. Throw a scoop of volcanic ash or pumice over a spill on the garage floor or the driveway, give it an hour to drink the oil up, and sweep it away, stain and all, exactly the way my grandfather cleared that oil off the shed floor when I was a boy. It pulls the oil up out of the pores of the concrete instead of just smearing it around. That is the bag of oil absorbent, or the tub of cat litter people keep for the same job at a small fraction of the cost. Use 12 is traction on ice, without wrecking everything that salt wrecks. A scatter of coarse volcanic grit on an icy walk or an icy step gives your boots something to bite into. And unlike rock salt, it will not eat away your concrete, rust the underside of your car, burn the dog's paws, or kill the plants along the path when it all washes off in the spring melt. I did not grow up with ice, but the first northern winter I spent, An old neighbor showed me his bucket of volcanic grit by the door and never once reached for the salt. It pulls smell, it pulls damp, it soaks up grease, it grips ice, and it never rots, never expires, and never runs out. And the last three uses are the oldest ones of all, the ones my island is literally built out of. Use 13 is making a patch, a plaster, or a mortar that lasts for centuries instead of seasons. Fine volcanic ash is what builders call podzolon, and mixed with lime it makes a plaster and a mortar so durable that the Romans built harbors out of it that are still standing in the sea 2,000 years later. And my own island is built with that very same pozzolana for as long as anyone can remember. Worked into your lime or your patch mix, it makes the repair harder, tighter, and far longer lived because it keeps setting and hardening for years instead of just drying once. That is the bag of patch compound in the hardware aisle, except this version can outlive the wall it mends. Use 14 is lightweight concrete and fill. Because pumice is so full of trapped air, it is light and it insulates, and it has been used for ages as a lightweight aggregate in concrete and as a fill that does not add crushing weight. The same reason those volcanic stone walls keep a house cool through a hard sun, which is a whole other story I have told you before. For a garden path, a raised planter, a small light pour where you do not want the dead weight of gravel, volcanic aggregate carries the load without breaking your back or your foundation. Use 15 as filtering water for your pond, your aquarium, your rain barrel, or a simple gray water setup. Those same little holes that trap odor and damp also catch fine particles and give the good, cleaning bacteria a place to grow, which is exactly what a filter needs to do its work. A mesh bag of pumice or zeolite sitting in the flow does the job of a cartridge you would otherwise buy, use up, and throw away, over and over and over. The Romans built harbors with this stone that still stand today. The plastic patch compound you bought last year might just make it to spring. Now, before I give you the best three, let me throw in three more the store will like even less. The first is a barrier against slugs and snails, a ring of sharp, coarse volcanic grit poured around a plant or along the edge of a bed is miserable for a soft slug to cross, so it keeps them off your seedlings without a single drop of poison. My grandmother ringed her young greens with grit every spring and never lost them the way the neighbors lost theirs. That is the box of slug pellets in the garden aisle, gone. The second is sharpening and cleaning an edge. A flat piece of pumice, or a paste of the fine grit, pulls the rust and the burr off a dull blade, a hoe, or a pair of shears and brings back a working edge. The old rough sharpening stone was often nothing fancier than a piece of volcanic rock. My grandfather kept one by the shed door for exactly that. The third is fireproofing. The rock came out of a fire. It does not burn. A bed of volcanic gravel is what you want under a fire pit or around a grill, and light volcanic stone has long been used as a non-flammable packing around heat. Where a plastic, anything melts and a bag of sand just slumps, the volcano sits there because it has already been through far worse. That is three more on top of the 15. Still one rock, and you do not have to fly to my island to get it. You buy the fine rock dust at a garden center, the coarse and fine pumice at a garden or hardware store or a pool supply shop, and the zeolite where they sell aquarium or odor supplies. All of it by the bag, all of it cheap, and one bag of each will outlast most of the bottles it replaces several times over. Before we pick the top three, here are the three simple mixes to make from your one bag, so you are never guessing. For the garden, a couple of good handfuls of rock dust and a shovelful of coarse pumice worked into the top few inches of each bed, once. That is your feeding and your drainage in a single pass. For the cleaning, half a cup of fine pumice stirred into a cup of plain liquid soap in an old jar. That one jar is your grease hand cleaner and your scouring paste. For the air, fill a couple of open dishes or cloth pouches with zeolite and set them where the smell or the damp is, and once a month put them in the sun for an afternoon to make them new again. 3 mixes, 1 bag. That is the whole system that quietly empties 5 aisles. So if 15 is too many to start with, then take 3. If I had to keep only 3 uses of this black rock and give the rest back, here is what I would hold on to. Number 1, feeding the soil. A single bag of rock dust worked into your beds pays you back every season for years in a garden that slowly stops needing the fertilizer aisle at all. That is the biggest, slowest, surest saving of the whole list. Number 2, the grit that cleans. 1 jar of fine pumice is your heavy-duty hand cleaner, your scouring powder, your metal polish, and your footstone all at once. 4 aisles collapse down into 1 rock under the sink. And number 3, the zeolite that breathes. 1 tub that pulls the smell out of your fridge and your shoes and the damp out of your closet that you dry in the sun and use again forever and never rebuy. Start with those 3 alone, and you have already left half your shopping cart sitting on the shelf. And notice what all 3 have in common. You buy it once. Not once a month, not once a season, once. The rock does not get used up the way a bottle does. It feeds, it scrubs, it breathes, and it is still sitting there next year, and the year after that, asking for nothing. Now, here is the whole thing. The part the store is quietly counting on. The store did not invent 15 products. It took 1 rock. The cheapest, most common thing on my entire island, the stuff we sweep off the porch. And it ground that rock 15 different ways, dropped each grind into its own bottle, gave every bottle its own aisle and its own price, and sold you the whole building. The garden one, the cleaning one, the foot one, the driveway one. 15 labels, 1 volcano. The knowledge was never lost. My grandfather had every bit of it in a single bucket by the door. It was just broken into pieces, scattered across a store, and marked up at every step until nobody remembered they were buying the same handful of ground-up stone over and over all their lives. Now you remember, and 1 bag of it, for a few dollars, does the work of an entire cart. It is the same game in every aisle once you learn to see it. 1 simple thing, broken into a dozen branded bottles, so that you buy it over and over and never notice you already own the whole shelf in a single sack. My grandfather was not a chemist. He was just poor enough and old enough to have never been sold the trick in the first place. Do 1 thing for me before you go. Out of the 15, tell me which one you are going to try first. Just put the number in the comments. I want to see which one people reach for. The garden, the sink, or the driveway. If you would rather own 1 honest rock than a shelf full of bottles, then you already know what to do. Subscribe. Because next time, I am going to show you how an island that imports almost everything it eats still kept its food edible for months, with no fridge, no freezer, and no power at all. The salt and sun system my people have used for as long as anyone can remember. The grocery store will not tell you about that one either. There is a reason, and I will show you.